A wounded single mom clutching her child and running from danger, with no plan, no safety net, and nowhere to turn. Just when it seems the world has turned its back on her, fate intervenes in the most unexpected way. What happens next will challenge everything she thought she knew about trust, survival, and second chances. But can a heart once shattered ever truly heal, especially in the arms of a stranger? This is a story of escape, reckoning, and the kind of love that comes when you least expect it. The morning air bit at her skin, dry and sharp, as Sarah tightened her grip on her daughter. The streets were quiet, bathed in the faint orange of dawn, but nothing felt peaceful. Every sound, a dog barking in the distance, a car door slamming blocks away, made her flinch. Sarah's right eye was swollen, her lips split, her legs wobbled beneath dress, hiding bruises that mapped a story no mother should carry. Blood had dried in her hair, just behind her ear, the aftermath of what happened only hours ago. She didn't remember passing out. She only remembered the sound, the sickening thud as the side of her head struck the countertop. And Mark's voice, low and threatening. "You want to leave? Go ahead. See how far you'll get." She hadn't waited to find out what came next. She couldn't. Now, she carried her sleeping daughter, 4-year-old Lily, wrapped in a threadbare pink blanket. The child's tiny arms clung instinctively to her mother's neck, unaware of the world unraveling around them. Sarah's fingers trembled as she reached in her coat pocket, clutching the wrinkled flyer she had kept hidden in an old recipe book. New Dawn Shelter, no questions asked. Women and children welcome. A name, a number, and an address. It was all she had. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps. Each step down the sidewalk felt heavier than the last. Her shoes, old sneakers with thinning soles, slapped against the pavement, rhythmically, like a timer counting down. She knew she wouldn't make it far if she stopped, so she didn't. She just walked. Her vision blurred, from tears, from pain, from the pulsing concussion that made her head pound with every beat of her heart. She blinked hard and pressed forward. The shelter was just across the street now. A block more, maybe two. Her arms ached from carrying Lily, but she dared not wake her. The girl's sleep was the only peace left in either of their lives. The traffic light at the corner flickered yellow, then red. Sarah didn't see it. She didn't notice the crosswalk sign, blinking a warning. Her mind was in the hallway of last night, flashing images of broken dishes, screaming, Lily's cries from the other room. Her body walked, but her soul was stuck in that kitchen, bleeding on the floor. As she stepped off the curb, the sudden sound of screeching tires ripped through the silence. A scream. Not hers, Lily's. A flash of white headlights seared into her eyes, freezing her mid-step. Then nothing. Her knees gave out, and the world seemed to tilt. The ground rushed up toward her face, and everything turned weightless for a second, like falling into a dream. She didn't feel herself hit the pavement. She didn't feel the warmth of the arms that reached out to catch her. Only the cold and silence. The SUV idled just inches away. Its tires smoked from the abrupt stop, the engine humming in disbelief. The driver's door flung open, but Sarah never saw who came out. Her body lay crumpled, one arm still curled around Lily's tiny form, her face slack, pale, still. Lily whimpered, confused, reaching for her mother's hair with her small fingers. Traffic began to back up. Horns honked, but none of it pierced the stillness that had fallen on the crosswalk, a stillness that said something irreversible had just happened. But Sarah didn't hear the chaos. She had slipped into the darkness. The SUV's tires smoked against the asphalt, a sharp scent of burning rubber hanging in the cold morning air. The headlights shone fiercely onto the street, illuminating the crumpled figure lying just inches from death. Ethan Blackwell sat frozen for half a second behind the wheel, breath caught in his throat. He had seen her too late, a woman and child stepping into the road, fragile silhouettes against the rising sun. The impact hadn't come, but something inside him had still broken. He pushed open the driver's door and sprinted forward, heart racing. She was face down, hair tangled, her coat half spread open as if she had simply dropped from the sky. The little girl beside her whimpered, barely conscious but still clutching her mother's sweater. Ethan dropped to his knees beside them, immediately dialing emergency services with trembling hands. "Stay with me," he murmured, even though she couldn't hear him. He gently reached for the child first, carefully checking her arms, her head, no visible wounds. She blinked up at him with glassy eyes, confused and scared. Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat. "You're okay, sweetheart. You're okay." He turned his attention to the mother, the woman who'd collapsed in front of him like a falling star. Her pulse was faint but steady. Her face was bruised, discolored, her lips split and swollen. A dark welt marked the side of her head. Blood had matted her hair, and her skin felt cold to the touch. He took off his coat and wrapped it around her, shielding her from the chill. Sirens wailed in the distance, thank God, growing louder. He stood up and waved both arms, directing the ambulance as it neared. Within seconds, EMTs poured out and took over the scene. "She just collapsed," Ethan explained quickly. "She had a child with her. There, the little girl. She's 4, I think. I didn't hit them. I swear. I stopped in time. But she just dropped." The medics barely nodded, focused entirely on stabilizing Sarah. She was lifted onto a stretcher with careful hands, Lily bundled tightly in the arms of a female responder who kept murmuring soothing words. Ethan followed them into the ambulance without hesitation. The hospital was a flurry of movement. Sliding doors whooshed open, stretchers rushed down hallways, nurses calling out orders. In the center of it all was Sarah, hooked up to monitors, her vitals being checked every minute. Ethan waited nearby, coat gone, sleeves rolled up, pacing in silence. He had given the hospital staff his name, his number, and his insurance details without a second thought. He just wanted to make sure they were safe. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, a nurse walked toward him. "She's awake," she said gently, and asking for her daughter. Ethan stepped into the private room. It was warm and quiet, sunlight drifting through the blinds. Sarah lay in the bed, pale and exhausted, a bandage wrapped around her head. Lily sat beside her, tiny fingers curled in her mother's palm. Sarah looked at Ethan cautiously, her voice raspy. "You're the driver?" He nodded. "Yes, I'm Ethan Blackwell." She blinked slowly. "The name sounds familiar." He offered a small, awkward smile. "I run a few charities, mostly low-profile events. I was coming back from one this morning when I almost—" Her eyes dropped to the bedsheet. "You didn't hit me. I was dizzy. From last night. I didn't see the light." "You don't have to explain," he said gently. "You were hurt. That's all that matters now." She looked up, her voice firmer. "I need to leave. There's a shelter, not far from here." Ethan hesitated. "You just had a concussion. You need rest. And your daughter, she needs stability. I have a place. A large home with more rooms than I know what to do with. You can stay a night or 2, just until you feel stronger." Sarah narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "Why?" He didn't flinch. "Because I was raised to help when someone's on the ground." She looked at Lily, who was quietly watching them both, then back at Ethan. "I don't want charity," she whispered. "And I'm not offering it," he replied softly. "Just a safe place. That's all." Sarah looked away again, lips trembling. She said nothing more, but she didn't say no. The black gates opened slowly as the car pulled into the long driveway. Sarah sat rigid in the passenger seat, Lily nestled in her lap, watching wide-eyed through the window. Towering oaks lined the path like silent guardians. In the distance stood a mansion that looked like something from a painting, elegant but quiet, touched by warm lights and gentle ivy that curled across its stone walls. Sarah's fingers tightened around Lily. She had no idea where this new path would lead, only that she couldn't turn back. Her heart fluttered with unease, not because the place was unwelcoming, but because she was stepping into a world far removed from anything she had ever known. A world where kindness didn't come with a price tag, and doors opened without being slammed. Ethan parked the car near the entrance and got out, circling quickly to open the door for her. She hesitated for a moment before stepping out, Lily still tucked close to her chest. Her eyes darted across the manicured lawn, the clean stone steps, the large glass doors that revealed a warm, lived-in interior. "This is yours?" she asked, not hiding the disbelief in her voice. He gave a modest nod. Yes. But you're welcome here, too." The house smelled of cedarwood and something sweet like cinnamon. A fireplace crackled gently in a distant room. The foyer was quiet, not sterile like she'd feared. There were photographs on the walls, not of luxury, but of moments. A dog, a little boy in rain boots, a woman laughing. Ethan led her into a small guest room on the east wing. Soft cream walls, a plush bed, a small window overlooking the garden. "There's a bathroom through there," he said, keeping his voice low. "Towels in the cabinet, clean clothes in the dresser. Lily can stay here with you, or we can prepare the next room." Sarah turned slowly, trying to make sense of it all. "Why would you go through all this?" Ethan's eyes didn't flinch. "Because you needed help. That's all." She nodded stiffly, still standing near the door, her posture rigid. "I don't take handouts," she said quietly. "I don't want to owe anyone anything." He regarded her for a moment. "Then let's not call it a handout. You can help around the house if that makes you more comfortable. It's a big place." She nodded again. "I can clean, cook, laundry. I've done it all." "Then it's settled," he said gently. "Let me know if you need anything." And with that, he left her alone. The first night passed in cautious silence. Sarah lay awake while Lily slept beside her, the sound of the wind in the trees replacing the familiar dread of footsteps outside the door. Morning light streamed through the windows, soft and golden. For once, it wasn't followed by shouting. She got up early, found the kitchen, and started cleaning. The staff had already tidied up, but she scrubbed anyway. Wiping surfaces that were already spotless, organizing cupboards that didn't need organizing. It wasn't about the chores. It was about feeling useful, feeling human. By noon, Lily was laughing in the sunlit garden, chasing butterflies between trimmed hedges. Sarah stood by the doorway, watching with a mixture of wonder and disbelief. Her daughter hadn't laughed like that in months. Ethan walked by with a mug of coffee in hand, pausing when he saw her. "She's got energy," he said with a smile. "She's never had this much space before," Sarah replied. There was a pause. "I can help in the library next," she offered, eyes cast downward. "You don't have to clean everything," he said gently. "I want to," she insisted. He nodded, respecting the boundary. Over the following days, an unspoken rhythm developed. She cooked breakfast, he brewed coffee. She folded laundry, he fixed squeaky doors. There was no pressure, no expectations. Just small, quiet exchanges that grew more natural with time. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Sarah stood on the back patio, staring up at the stars. Ethan joined her without a word, handing her a blanket. She accepted it with a murmur of thanks. Neither of them said much. They didn't need to. For the first time in a long time, silence felt safe. The kitchen was quiet except for the gentle hum of the dishwasher and the occasional clink of dishes being put away. Sarah stood at the sink, sleeves rolled up, her hands submerged in warm water as she scrubbed glass. Outside the wide windows, the garden faded into twilight. Ethan entered quietly, carrying an empty mug, pausing when he noticed her back was turned. "You don't have to do that tonight," he said casually, setting the mug on the counter. "I don't mind," she replied, not looking up. But when she reached for the towel beside her, the cuff of her blouse shifted. Just enough. Ethan saw it. A faded bruise near her elbow, deep, old, but unmistakably the kind only a hand could leave behind. He said nothing at first, only stepped closer, softer now. "Sarah," he said gently, "can I ask you something?" She froze. "I saw your arm," he continued carefully. "If that's overstepping, I'm sorry. Her hands trembled as she turned off the faucet. She still didn't meet his eyes. "You don't have to tell me anything," Ethan added quickly, sensing her withdrawal. But something cracked open in that moment, not from pressure, but from kindness. "I used to hide them better," she said, her voice brittle. "Long sleeves, makeup, smiles." He stood still, waiting. She turned slightly, wiping her wet hands on a dish towel. Her eyes were glassy but fierce. It wasn't just the bruises. It was the way he made me feel like I was never enough. Like I was worthless. Every day. For years. Ethan's expression didn't change, but something in his posture softened, as if absorbing the weight of her words. Sarah sat down at the small kitchen table, arms folded tightly across her chest. I started keeping records, she continued. Photos, voice memos, copies of text messages. I hid them in places he'd never think to look. I wanted to run for a long time, but I kept thinking, what if no one believes me? Ethan took a slow breath, then sat across from her. I believe you. She looked at him then, not with gratitude, but with disbelief, like the words were too heavy to be real. You don't have to carry that here, he said gently. This house, this space, it's yours as long as you want it. No one's going to hurt you. You're safe. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Tears welled in her eyes, but none fell. She nodded once. Thank you. And in that moment, with no promises, no expectations, and no pity, just quiet understanding, Sarah felt something she hadn't in a very long time. She felt safe for the very first time. The small grocery store at the edge of town was quiet that afternoon, its aisles lit softly by overhead lights and the scent of fresh bread drifting from the bakery section. Sarah pushed the cart slowly, one hand steadying Lily, who was perched inside, giggling as she reached for a box of cereal. Sarah's mind was calm. For once calm. She had a list in her pocket, a smile on her lips, and the warmth of a home waiting for her. Not a house filled with fear, but a place where laughter had begun to return. She turned the corner into the next aisle and froze. He was standing there. Mark. Time stopped. His frame was leaner, his beard rougher, but those eyes, cold, possessive, furious, were unmistakable. He was grabbing a can off the shelf, but the moment their eyes met, his entire body stiffened. The can dropped with a dull thud. Sarah's breath hitched. Her chest tightened. For a second, she thought she might collapse again. He moved toward her. Well, Mark sneered, voice low and dangerous. Look what I found crawling around like a rat. She instinctively pulled the cart closer, shielding Lily with her body. Don't. You disappear with my kid, he growled, stepping closer. You think you can hide from me? Sarah backed away, heart racing. People began to glance curiously down the aisle, sensing the tension but unsure what they were witnessing. I'm calling security, she warned, voice trembling. Mark laughed, cruel and sharp. Go ahead. Let's see how far that gets you when I tell them you kidnapped my daughter. Sarah didn't wait. She spun the cart around and rushed out, ignoring the confusion on the store clerk's face as she bolted past the register. She didn't stop moving, not until she was back in the car, hands shaking as she fumbled for the keys. He had seen her. He had found her. The gates of Ethan's estate opened just as Sarah sped up the driveway, tires crunching the gravel. She jumped out, unbuckling Lily with shaking hands, glancing over her shoulder constantly. Inside the house, she barely made it to the living room before the sobs started to rise at her throat. But she didn't have time to cry. Moments later, a loud voice shattered the calm. Sarah, Mark's voice boomed from beyond the front door. Open this damn gate. You think you can hide behind some rich fool? Sarah's blood turned cold. The security system buzzed. Ethan had already seen him on the camera feed. He walked swiftly to the front door, his usually calm expression carved now in stone. Sarah stood frozen behind him. Mark shoved through the gate, storming up the walkway, fists clenched, voice rising with every step. I want my wife and kid, he shouted. You're not welcome here, Ethan said firmly, stepping outside. This has nothing to do with you. Mark spat. She's mine, and I'm taking her back. She's not an object, Ethan replied, voice dangerously calm. And you're not taking anything. Sarah appeared behind Ethan now, her voice trembling but steady. I'm not going anywhere with you, Mark. Ever. Mark's eyes widened at her defiance, stunned by the strength in her voice. You've lost your mind. You think you can run to someone else and keep my daughter from me? Ethan stepped forward, his stance protective. Leave. Now, or I'll make you. Mark lunged forward, but before he could even touch the steps, Ethan met him halfway. He didn't raise his fist. He didn't have to. He grabbed Mark by the collar and shoved him backward, off the path, away from the house. Mark stumbled, caught off guard. You step foot here again, Ethan warned, eyes blazing. You'll answer to more than just me. Mark staggered back toward the street, his threats turning to snarls. This isn't over. The gates closed with a hard finality behind him. Inside, Sarah dropped to her knees. The panic, the pressure, the fear she'd held together all this time finally spilled out in ragged sobs. Ethan knelt beside her, holding her gently as she trembled. I thought I was free, she whispered. I thought I was finally safe. You are, he said softly, holding her tighter. It happened early one morning, sharp knocks at the mansion's gate, followed by flashing lights reflecting off polished windows. Ethan stepped outside, his expression hardening as two uniformed officers approached with serious faces and clipped tones. We have a court order, one officer declared, holding up the folded paper. We're here to retrieve Mark Collins' wife and daughter, who, according to this order, were unlawfully taken from his custody. Inside, Sarah stood frozen at the foot of the staircase, Lily clinging to her leg. Her breath caught in her throat. She had known Mark wouldn't disappear quietly, but she hadn't expected this. I'm not taken, she said, stepping forward with shaky resolve. I left. The officer gave her a regretful look. Ma'am, the court has temporarily granted him retrieval rights until the matter is formally reviewed. You'll need to come with us. Ethan's voice was low and firm. You're making a mistake. Sarah raised her hand gently. It's okay. I'm ready. And she was. The courtroom smelled of old paper and polish, the air heavy with formality and expectation. Mark sat smugly beside his lawyer, his hair slicked back, his posture cocky. Every now and then he'd glance at Ethan, seated quietly in the back, a smirk twitching at the corner of his mouth. Sarah took her seat across the aisle. Her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Carla Barnes, leaned over and whispered, You're going to be fine. Just stick to the facts. Mark was the first to testify. She ran away. He began, painting himself as the concerned father, abandoned by a wife suffering from emotional instability. His voice rose with every sentence, laced with practiced outrage. I let her stay home to raise her daughter, but she became erratic, angry. I was scared for Lily. Then one day, she vanished, with a child that is legally mine. He turned to the judge, feigning sincerity. Your Honor, I just want my family back. The judge nodded, expression unreadable. Thank you, Mr. Collins. We'll now hear from Mrs. Collins. Sarah rose to the stand slowly, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. I didn't run, she said calmly. I escaped. Gasps whispered through the courtroom. Mark shifted in his seat. She continued, her voice clear, unwavering. For years, I endured physical, emotional, and psychological abuse. I stayed silent because I was afraid, because he convinced me no one would believe me. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket and handed it to her attorney, who loaded it onto the court system. What followed was a steady stream of images and audio. Photos of bruises, time-stamped, taken in the bathroom mirror under flickering light. A recording of Mark yelling, calling her worthless, threatening to take Lily away. A medical report from a local clinic, concussion, blunt force trauma consistent with domestic abuse. By the time it ended, the courtroom had fallen into stunned silence. Mark's face turned pale. His lawyer whispered something urgently, but the man sat frozen, mouth agape. The judge cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses as he looked down at the paperwork before him. This court finds sufficient and compelling evidence that Mrs. Collins acted in the best interest of her child and herself. Her actions were not only justified, but necessary for their safety. He turned his gaze to Mark. As for the fabricated court order, the manipulation of law enforcement, and your history of abuse, Mr. Collins, you will be remanded into custody pending sentencing for assault, coercion, and filing false claims under oath. The gavel came down with finality. Full custody awarded to Sarah Collins. Case closed. Sarah walked out of the courtroom with her head high, the weight she'd carried for years finally beginning to lift. Ethan met her at the steps, eyes searching hers for any sign of fear. She exhaled slowly, a soft, shaky smile forming. He can't hurt us anymore. And for the first time in her life, The truth was on her side, and so was freedom. The days moved gently now, like pages in a story that no longer rushed to its ending. The walls of Ethan's home, once unfamiliar, now echoed with the warmth of new beginnings. Laughter threaded its way through the halls, most often Lily's, light and unburdened, a sound that once felt impossible. Sarah had begun to change in quiet ways. Her eyes, once clouded with caution, now sparkled with moments of lightness. She smiled more. She walked without looking over her shoulder. Her posture, once folded inward, began to straighten with confidence. Healing wasn't sudden. It was slow, tender, and earned with time. And time was something Ethan gave without condition. He never asked for anything. He simply stayed, present in her world, helping with dinner, laughing during movie nights, sitting beside her in the garden while Lily chased butterflies through the hedges. There were no grand declarations, just gentle, growing closeness, a comfort that deepened without effort. They would talk sometimes late into the night, after Lily had fallen asleep, about books, about dreams, about second chances. And in those moments, between the silences and shared smiles, something new quietly took root. One evening, the sky was painted in soft gold and lilac, the kind of twilight that wraps around you like a warm breeze. Lily was running barefoot in the grass, chasing the bubbles Ethan had just blown into the air. Her laughter rang out like wind chimes. Sarah sat on the porch steps, barefoot, her dress fluttering slightly in the breeze. Ethan joined her, sitting close but not too close. They watched Lily together. "She's happy," he said softly. "She's free," Sarah replied. There was a pause, not awkward, but full of quiet understanding. Ethan reached into his pocket, fingers trembling slightly, and pulled out a small velvet box. He didn't open it right away. He looked at her first. "I don't know the right words," he began, "but I know what I feel." She turned to him, eyes searching his face. "You brought something into this house that I didn't even realize I was missing," he continued. "You brought life, laughter, meaning, and I love you, Sarah." He opened the box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring. No flourish, no extravagance, just love, plain and real. Sarah's breath caught. Her hands came to her mouth. Tears filled her eyes, not from pain this time, but from the overwhelming grace of being seen, of being chosen. "Yes," she whispered, voice cracking. "Yes." Lily's giggles continued in the background as Ethan slid the ring onto her finger. Then he reached for her hand, and she didn't let go. In the garden bathed in golden light, they stood as a family. Not broken, not haunted, but whole. She had run from fear into the arms of peace. And in the end, love found them both. If this story touched your heart, like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more powerful, soul-touching stories that restore faith in humanity.